buried it with honors here not long ago." He spoke without bitterness. Whatever resentment he might have felt died in that awful presence. "He got into the house early tonight," he said, "probably with the doctor's connivance. That wristwatch there is probably the luminous eye Lizzie thought she saw." But Miss Cornelia's face was still thoughtful, and he went on. "Isn't it clear, Miss Van Gorder?" he queried with a smile. "The doctor and old Mr. Fleming formed a conspiracy. Both needed money, lots of it. Fleming was to rob the bank and hide the money here. Wells' part was to issue a false death certificate in the West and bury a substitute body, secured God knows how. It was easy. It kept the name of the president of the Union Bank free from suspicion, and it put the blame on me." He paused, thinking it out. "Only they slipped up in one place. Dick Fleming leased the house to you, and they couldn't get it back." "Then you are sure," said Miss Cornelia quickly, "that tonight Courtleigh Fleming broke in, with the doctor's assistance, and that he killed Dick, his own nephew, from the staircase?" "Aren't you?" asked Bailey, surprised. The more he thought of it, the less clearly could he visualize it any other way. Miss Cornelia shook her head decidedly. "No." Bailey thought her merely obstinate, unwilling to give up, for pride's sake, her own pet theory of the activities of the Bat. "Wells tried to get out of the house tonight with that blueprint. Why? Because he knew the moment we got it, we'd come up here, and Fleming was here." "Perfectly true," nodded Miss Cornelia. "And then?" "Old Fleming killed Dick, and Wells killed Fleming," said Bailey succinctly. "You can't get away from it." But Miss Cornelia still shook her head. The explanation was too mechanical. It laid too little emphasis on the characters of those most concerned. "No," she said, "no. The doctor isn't a murderer. He's as puzzled as we are about some things. He and Courtleigh Fleming were working together, but remember this, Dr. Wells was locked in the living room with us. He'd been trying to get up the stairs all evening and failed every time." But Bailey was as convinced of the truth of his theory as she of hers. "He was here 10 minutes ago, locked in this room," he said, with a glance at the ladder up which the doctor had ascended. "I'll grant you that," said Miss Cornelia, "but—" She thought back swiftly. "But at the same time an unknown masked man was locked in that mantel room with Dale. The doctor put out the candle when you opened that hidden room. Why? Because he thought Courtleigh Fleming was hiding there." Now the missing pieces of her puzzle were falling into their places with a vengeance. "But at this moment," she continued, "the doctor believes that Fleming has made his escape. No, we haven't solved the mystery yet. There's another element, an unknown element." Her eyes rested for a moment upon the unknown. "And that element is the Bat." She paused impressively. The others stared at her, no longer able to deny the sinister plausibility of her theory. But this new tangling of the mystery, just when the black thread seemed raveled out at last, was almost too much for Dale. "Oh, call the detective," she stammered, on the verge of hysterical tears. "Let's get through with this thing. I can't bear any more." But Miss Cornelia did not even hear her. Her mind, strung now to concert pitch, had harked back to the point it had reached some time ago, and which all the recent distractions had momentarily obliterated. Had the money been taken out of the house, or had it not? In that mad rush for escape, had the man hidden with Dale in the recess back of the mantel carried his booty with him, or left it behind? It was not in the hidden room, that was certain. Yet she was so hopeless by that time that her first search was purely perfunctory. During her progress about the room, the Unknown's eyes followed her, but so still had he sat, so amazing had been the discovery of the body, that no one any longer observed him. Now and then his head drooped forward as if actual weakness was almost overpowering him, but his eyes were keen and observant, and he was no longer taking the trouble to act, if he had been acting. It was when Bailey finally opened the lid of a clothes hamper that they stumbled on their first clue. "Nothing here but some clothes and books," he said, glancing inside. "Books?" said Miss Cornelia dubiously. "I left no books in that hamper." Bailey picked up one of the cheap paper novels and read its title aloud with a wry smile. Little Rosebud's Lover, or The Cruel Revenge, by Laura Jean— "That's mine," said Lizzie promptly. "Oh, Miss Neily, I tell you this house is haunted. I left that book in my satchel along with Wedded But No Wife, and now—" "Where's your satchel?" snapped Miss Cornelia, her eyes gleaming. "Where's my satchel?" mumbled Lizzie, staring about as best she could. "I don't see it. If that wretch has stolen my satchel—" "Where did you leave it?" "Up here, right in this room. It was a new satchel, too. I'll have the law on him, that's what I'll do." "Isn't that your satchel, Lizzie?" asked Miss Cornelia, indicating a battered bag in a dark corner of shadows above the window. "Yes'm," she admitted, but she did not dare approach very close to the recovered bag. It might bite her. "Put it there on the hamper," ordered Miss Cornelia. "I'm scared to touch it," moaned Lizzie. "It may have a bomb in it." She took up the bag between finger and thumb and, holding it with the care she would have bestowed upon a bottle of nitroglycerin, carried it over to the hamper and set it down. Then she backed away from it, ready to leap for the door at a moment's warning. Miss Cornelia started for the satchel. Then she remembered. She turned to Bailey. "You open it," she said graciously. "If the money's there, you're the one who ought to find it." Bailey gave her a look of gratitude. Then, smiling at Dale encouragingly, he crossed over to the satchel, Dale at his heels. Miss Cornelia watched him fumble at the catch of the bag. Even Lizzie drew closer. For a moment, even the unknown was forgotten. Bailey gave a triumphant cry. "The money's here!" "Oh, thank God!" sobbed Dale. It was an emotional moment. It seemed to have penetrated even through the haze enveloping the injured man in his chair. Slowly he got up, like a man who has been waiting for his moment, and now that it had come, was in no hurry about it. With equal deliberation, he drew the revolver and took a step forward. And at that instant, a red glare appeared outside the open window, and overhead could be heard the feet of the searchers running. "Fire!" screamed Lizzie, pointing to the window, even as Beresford's voice from the roof rang out in a shout. "The garage is burning!" They turned toward the door to escape, but a strange and menacing figure blocked their way. It was the Unknown, no longer the bewildered stranger who had stumbled in through the living room door, but a man with every faculty of mind and body alert and the light of a deadly purpose in his eyes. He covered the group with Miss Cornelia's revolver. "This door is locked and the key is in my pocket," he said in a savage voice as the red light at the window grew yet more vivid and muffled cries and tramplings from overhead betokened universal confusion and alarm. End of chapter 19. Recording by Alan Winterroud. boomcoach.blogspot.com